You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast, established 2019. Direct from the North Wales coast, his verbal skills definitely outweigh his wrestling ability. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer!
A warm welcome to episode 33 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and my guest this week is none other than Rick Allen, aka Sunny Beach, and he was also known as Sandy Beach. Rick was an enhancement talent in the WWF and he got to wrestle some of the best, and you'll see there's a lot of photos on this episode. Some of the guys, he knew all the top guys, he was very friendly with the top guys in WWF. We also talk about Herb Abrams' Dark Side of the Ring. Obviously, he was in UWF with Herb Abrams, and he knew Herb very well too, and there's a lot of stories, a lot of background, and it was really good. Rick was also in Japan. You're going to get to hear about that in All Japan Pro Wrestling. He's now got a security firm. He's had a security firm for a long, long time. He talks about that, obviously, the pressures at the moment with COVID, and they've lost a lot of business and stuff, but they're still going. He's still doing stuff with the security firm, and I think he's been doing seminars and stuff of that nature, so yeah. An absolute gem of a guy. We like Rick a lot. And big thank you to Richie Sorrentino for putting this through for me as well. He set it all up. It was really, really nice for him. So yeah, good times guaranteed as well. Got to plug that for Richie. Well, it is my pleasure to have on this afternoon here in the UK none other than Rick Allen, also known as Sunny Beach. How's it going, Rick?
Good, Stewie. How are you? How's the weather in England today?
It's a bit breezy, if I'm honest. We've had a lot of sun the last few weeks, but it's gone a bit awry, the weather the last couple of days. How's it over there, Rick?
Well, it's raining out here in Long Island, and it's about 50 degrees, so it's not too bad. But I'm waiting for the summer to hit so we can get some sunshine, and hopefully after this coronavirus is over, get back out and go to the beaches and hang tent.
How are you finding it at the moment, Rick, with everything that's going on?
Everything is good. I own a security company out here in Long Island and New York and New Jersey, and business is down pretty bad because of this virus. They're not, all the nightclubs, restaurants, lounges, bars, special events, catering facilities. That's almost like 90% of my business, and we haven't been able to work. So a lot of my guys, are out of work, but we're been pretty creative. We're starting to do some grocery stores, some supermarkets, doctors' offices, medical supply houses and stuff like that. So we're getting a little bit of work, but the business is down probably about 90% right now.
Wow. Oh, that's huge, man.
Yeah, it's huge. But, the good thing is, we still got our health and, we're still alive. So that's, the main thing. You could always make money, but you can't ever buy your health back.
That's it. Rick, obviously you're in Long Island now, but you grew up in Florida. How was your childhood in Jacksonville, Florida?
Well, Jacksonville was a great place to grow up. I live real close to the beaches, so I started hunting and fishing when I was young, and got into sports, Little League baseball. I played football, wrestled, and threw shot put and discus in high school. I was all city wrestling in high school, and I had football scholarships to go to Florida State, Georgia Southern, Tennessee, a lot of different schools. I was recruited by over 20 colleges to play football, but my first love was wrestling, and I guess I was ate up with it. I got the wrestling bug at a young age, watching Dusty Rhodes and Championship Wrestling from Florida, and the Briscoe brothers, and Mike Graham, Steve Kern, Assassin, all those guys down there. It was a great place to grow up, and I got to live out my childhood dream.
That's cool. That's quite the resume of sports there, Rick.
Yeah, I got to do a lot at a young age. My parents really pushed me into, going into sports. And in junior high school, I was just an average sized kid. But once I got to high school, I started growing, started hitting the weights, did some weight training. And I was benching over 350 pounds in high school. So it was a pretty good thing. I was always in pretty good shape and running a lot. And, just always out there, always in the athletics my whole life. So it was a great place, Jacksonville, to grow up. Terry Parker High School, I'll give them a big shout out. I'm still very active down in Jacksonville, even living in Long Island. I We started about 8 years ago, Terry Parker Alumni Association, where all the old alumni from Terry Parker could get involved and donate back to the school, give back to the community. And we raised so far over $600,000 for my old high school for their athletic program.
I bet they're overjoyed with that money as well, obviously, for the kids now to do what they need to do.
Oh, yeah. Down in Jacksonville, it's, they really don't fund a lot of the high school athletic programs like they used to when I was growing up. A lot of budget cuts, and, they're always looking to save money here and there. And it's really sad because athletics suffers for it down there. So we bought them all new, like, team uniforms for the football team. We bought them football helmets, shoulder pads, whatever they needed. Bought a new ice machine for their athletic house. Bought the basketball team, cheerleaders. We send them on trips. We buy them Letterman jerseys. We pay for their team meals. So it's a good feel-good story, giving back, 30, 40 years later after you graduated from high school is, a great thing. And, if more people would get involved and pay it forward and give back, we'd have a better place to live.
How was studying at the University of North Florida?
It was good. I was going to be a policeman down there, believe it or not. While I was getting into pro wrestling, I sort of got a little bit dejected a couple of times because, I thought I should be moving up the ladder a little bit quicker, but I had to pay my dues like everybody else. And I was helping set up the rings when I was first starting out. I would referee matches. I would do whatever I could just to get involved with the wrestling and show them I really wanted this, and they test you, a lot of the old timers and stuff, hey, set up a ring, break down the ring, make sure we have beer in the cooler for after the matches, whatever it was, drive the guys around from town to town. So I paid my dues, and then, sometimes, I'd make $50, $100 a match, whatever it was, and just barely breaking even after you put gas in your car, pay for something to eat. And then if you were lucky enough to get a hotel room, a lot of times I slept in my car, believe it or not, just to save money. I'd make sandwiches. I'd go to the grocery store and buy, quarter pound of cheese or a pound of ham or whatever it might have been, made sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, tuna fish sandwiches. And then I'd go from a different town and try to go to gyms. Sometimes you have to pay $15-$20 a day to work out in a gym that wasn't your gym, like in your hometown gym that you have membership to. But, I wanted it bad enough and I went for it, and I finally got, made a name for myself a little bit. I started out in 1985 at Championship Wrestling from Florida. I was doing TV down there, enhancement talent, putting guys over, making them look good, and learning my craft. Then I started working out in Peach State Wrestling in Georgia. I would work Florida, Georgia, go back and forth, and just whoever would sign me up for matches, I would go anywhere, just to learn and try to get my foot in the door with a promotion and try to get a little push. And Peach State Wrestling gave us my first push. I was a Georgia heavyweight champion down there for Peach State, and then me and Ray Lloyd, who was Glacier, were tag team champions down there. And we had a really good time. It was a good learning experience. There was, a lot of journeyman wrestlers that were working down at Peach State. Mr. Wrestling #2, Johnny Walker, was there. Ted Oates, Jerry Oates, Tony Atlas would come in and out, Adrian Street, Steve the Brawler Lawler. There were so many different guys. Ray Lloyd, R.D. Swain, the Assassin would come in, Abdul the Butcher. So we had a huge array of talent to learn from. And then I started wrestling after that at Southern Championship for Jerry Blackwell. Jerry Blackwell, Buck Robley, Dick Slater, Wrestling 2, Tommy Rich, Bruiser Brody was there at the time, Abdul the Butcher, Ted Oates. Who else was there? Jeff Jarrett would come in and out. Kurt Hennig came in and out a couple of times. Jerry Lawler. So, you got to learn from some of the best in the business down south, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, that little circuit in there. We would, do a little run and different nights, different towns. And sometimes I would be double booked. I'd have an afternoon show and an evening show, a couple of 100 miles apart. You get to leave one locker room and, jump in your car and drive 2 hours to another show. So that's how bad I really wanted it. And I got discovered that way, with the WWF. They hired me to do No Holds Barred back in June of 1988. It was filmed down in Atlanta, Georgia. I had a big part in the movie, a fight scene with Lumberjack Joe LeDuc. We were in a no-count bar, the first fight scene in that little octagon bar. And it was a great time. I got to make some great friends down there. Stan Hansen, very good friend of mine to this day. Him and his wife, Yumi, come to my house and stay, whenever they're in New York. They're always welcome at my home. made lifelong friendships. Ray Lloyd, who I helped break into business. He became Glacier with WCW. He's been doing a few movie roles and stuff like that lately and trying to produce movies. And he's training wrestlers in Atlanta, Georgia for AEW right now. So, I made some great lifelong friendships out of this business.
How was the experience on set with being in No Holds Barred? Obviously, Hogan starred in it, and obviously Tiny Lister as well was in there, wasn't he, as Zeus?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've touched upon it, Rick.
They were great. I mean, it was great. Vince McMahon was down there on set a lot because WWF paid, bankrolled the movie. It was Titan Sports, was behind it, and it was like a really, really. We were only down there a week filming. We had to come in and they fitted us, went to wardrobe, and then they cut your hair and do the makeup and all that stuff. And then they have the food trucks on site where you can eat on, breakfast, lunch. And, it was some long days. We would, be there 12, 14-hour days filming and stuff. And then we would go to dinner afterwards, all the boys, or we'd go to the gym afterwards. There was a Gold's Gym there. A good friend of ours, Chip Smith, owned it back at the time. Good friend of Ray Lloyd's, and Ray Lloyd introduced me to Chip, and we became good friends. Chip's got he trains all the NFL pro football players, pro baseball players down in Atlanta, Georgia. He's got a really great facility down there, and that's where AEW does their wrestling training now for all their up and coming stars. But on the set with Tiny Lister and Stan Hansen, we were all in the same set, and we were all filming in the bar at the same time. So it was just a great time. Pete Doherty was there, the Duke of Dorchester. Who else was there? There was just so many different guys. Bill Eadie was in the movie Demolition. Ray was an extra in the movie. We got him a part in the movie and being an extra in the No Count Bar. Joe the Duke was great to work with. Professional. We would go out afterwards. We went to the Buckhead Diner for dinner. Tiny Lister, he'd come to the gym with us. Zeus, Hogan was on set. Go down to the gym, work out with him, sometimes when he was available. So, he had it tough because he was still doing a lot of TV, and he was still champion at the time when they were filming No Holds Barred. So he would go to TVs and then come back down to the movie set, and they were running him ragged. But, when you're a superstar making all that big money, you got to do what you got to do, I guess. But it was a great learning experience for me. I made a lot of great friends with No Holds Barred. And Stan Hansen, by meeting him at No Holds Barred, he got me booked into Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling in 91, 92. Made some good friends over in Japan, too, that I still keep in touch with on the internet. So, I had nothing but good things to say about No Holds Barred. They treated us great, very professional, first-class accommodations. I would do it again tomorrow. I still get residual checks once in a while. I'll get a little check here and there in the mail, from, video sales or distribution and all that stuff. But if I would have had a speaking role, I'd probably get a little bit more money. But I was just in there fighting and, doing my scene.
Yeah, man. That's nice. You're still getting royalties off it.
Yeah, enough to buy a Happy Meal at McDonald's once in a while, but that's about it. I think my last royalty check was like for $20, I think. So, they're getting smaller and smaller. I remember like the first one I got, it was, about $10,000 right when the movie came out and everything. And then after that, they got smaller and smaller, $2,000 here or, and you wouldn't get it, all of a sudden something would pop up in the mail, a couple of years later. And it's No Holds Barred was filmed in 88, and I think it got released in 89, if I'm not mistaken. And, it's been on Showtime, HBO, Cinemax, all the major, syndicated shows throughout the television spectrum. So, and then it was DVD distribution and VHS back, when it first came out. So it was fun, and I'm very proud of my role in the movie. And very proud of, my wrestling career. I mean, I wasn't a world champion in many places. I wasn't a top guy, but I wrestled all the top guys in the world. I mean, who could say that wrestled Andre the Giant, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, Abdul the Butcher? I wrestled Ray Candy, some of the biggest and baddest heels in the business, the Assassin. The list goes on. And I mean, I've been in there with some of the greats, and I loved what I did. Cactus Jack, Mick Foley. I've had, over 50 matches with him up and down the East Coast. Most of them were bloodbaths with the UWF, Herb Abrams promotion. We just did Dark Side of the Ring. It just aired this past week on Vice, and that was a pleasure to do. Try to set the record straight a little bit. There was two sides to Herb. He was like a Jekyll and a Hyde, but the side that I saw and the side that, I knew, he was a friend to me and my family. I had him at my house, probably over 100 times. He lived in New York right before he passed away, and his mom lived here. His family was from here. So, he had a lot of roots, and I tried to help him, whenever I could. When he was in New York, I was working in his office in New York City at the time he passed away. And I was probably one of the last people to see him alive. He was over at my house that weekend before he passed, and we had a cookout. He's just a good guy to me and my family. I mean, I always treat everybody the way I want to be treated, and he treated me well. Did I get a couple of bounce checks along the way? Yeah, but he always made good for him, and he always, he was very generous. He was very funny. They didn't really touch on a lot of that stuff. A couple of people maybe did in the segment with Dark Side, but they were just, they were more worried about what he did, off camera, his cocaine addiction and his addiction for, escorts.
Rick, do you think the episode could have been longer than 45 minutes?
Oh, yes. I mean, they didn't contact a lot of people. Steve Simon, Herb's first cousin, should have been on there, and they interviewed him, and I'm sure that he probably had a great interview and everything, but there wasn't enough time to really include everybody. George Napolitano, he's a, wrestling magazine person, he had Wrestling All-Star magazine. He's been in the business for forever, George Napolitano. And he had a lot of dealings with Herb. Blackjack Brown, another guy that does, radio shows, and he's been heavily involved in the wrestling. He could have been interviewed. So should, several other people. Paul Orndorff probably had a lot to say about Herb. He was around Herb a lot. A lot of guys aren't here anymore, like Bruno, Captain Lou, Steve Dr. Death Williams, Terry Gordy, Ivan Koloff. They all, work with Herb, and, everybody has their own Herb story. How they were contacted to work with Herb, their interactions with Herb while they were working with him, what Herb did. A lot of guys partied with Herb too. I'm not going to mention any names, but all these guys, that some of the guys that were on that show were partying with Herb, every inch of the way, and then they, you don't throw stones when you live in a glass house, and, you don't want to be, kind of like, talking about the dead, when they can't defend themselves either.
Just to go back to WWF, Rick.
Yes.
Which matches in WWF do you have fond memories of?
Oh, I had great matches. Back when I was starting in WWF in the summer of '88, right after I finished No Holds Barred, I was home for about 3 days, and I got my booking sheet, and I was on the road with WWF for the next couple of years. And I guess, like Barry Horowitz and Mike Sharp and myself and, maybe like Steve Lombardi and maybe the Young Stallions at the time, DJ Peterson was there. We all were like enhancement talent. We put the top guys over of Hogan or Macho Man or Andre the Giant or Demolition, or they were doing a big angle or a big push, Jake Roberts. They'd put us in with them and make them look good. And I was a big guy, and they put me in with all the big boys, Hillbilly Jim, get him over. Ronnie Garvin, when he was there, I had matches with Ronnie a lot. Scott Casey, I had some great matches with Scott. Hercules, when they turned to babyface. Lanny Poffo, I wrestled him a lot in the WWF. Conquistadors, they were great guys. Funny story, one time Jose Luis Rivera got hurt, and he couldn't go out and work, so I had to be a conquistador for the night, and we wrestled the Rockers, and we had a great match. And Jose, he didn't tell. Chief J. Strongbow was one of the agents, and Tony Gurria was one of the agents at the time. And we're at, I think we were somewhere in Maryland. I don't know, Landover, Maryland, or big arena down there. Everybody's, when you're wrestling, everybody watches each other's matches. They're backstage, they're behind the curtain, or if they're in the auditorium, they'll peep out and they'll watch, before their matches. And Chief Strongbow and them, they were watching the match, and I was in there in the Conquistador gimmick, and we didn't tell Chief what we were doing. I was just, I didn't want, Jose to get in trouble or nothing, but Jose was watching the match, and it was a Conquistador match, and he was supposed to be out there. And Strongbow looks at him and looks out there in the ring, and then he looks back at him. He goes, "What are you doing back here? Who's in the ring?" He goes, "Sunny Beach, Conquistador number 3." So he started busting out laughing, and Chief goes, "What happened?" He goes, "I hurt my ankle." He goes, "I can't even walk on my ankle." And limping around, he goes, "I'd be no good out there." He goes, "So Sunny Beach offered to fill in for me." So he goes, "Okay, no problem." So when he came out there, Chief started busting my ass. He goes, "What are you doing out there? Why didn't you tell me?" Blah, blah, blah. I said, "Chief, the guy was hurt." I said, "I didn't think there'd be no harm in it. I wrestled, Brockers a bunch." We had a really good match. And he said, "I think we're going to fire Jose and make you a conquistador." So that was one of the good stories, and hanging out with the boys, that was always fun, after the matches, we'd always go to different bars or, go back to restaurants and, hang out and talk and, just traveling up and down the roads together, sometimes you were with your wrestling family more than you were with your own family, and you got to be, really close with a lot of people on the road. Barry Horowitz is a good personal friend. I know he was on your show recently. I still see Barry every time he comes to New York. We always get together. We've been doing a lot of signings together. We did this event called The Big Event here in New York City about 4 months ago. Myself and Tony Atlas were featured on the Monty and the Pharaoh show where they sponsored us to go over to sign some autographs over at this big event. And then we were hanging out with Barry and a bunch of other guys. Patriot Del Wilkes was there. Manny Fernandez, Kurt Angle, Undertaker was actually there, and Braun Strowman from the WWE signing autographs. So it's good to see the boys again. I've been out of the wrestling business for over 20 years now, and I've did very rarely in the last 20 years. I was concentrating on getting my business going, my security guard company, and I did maybe 2 or 3, meet and greets and conventions, within that 20 years. But now since the internet's huge. The wrestling business is, blooming with AEW and WWF and NWA and all these other promotions that are on TV. People want to see some of the old timers like myself and the Barry Horowitzes and, Paul Orndorffs and who's ever, making the rounds doing these autograph signings. The Nasty Boys are at a lot of them. Greg Valentine, Brutus Beefcake, Honky Tonk Man, Demolition goes to a lot of these events. Ron Simmons, I see him a lot. Tony Atlas, Butch Reed, I saw him recently. He doesn't do too many of them, but it's good to see some of the guys that you grew up with and you wrestled with, when you were starting out in the business.
That's cool, man. What a list of guys there as well. I've been over to the States a few times. Well, say a few times, 7 times for WrestleMania. Done WrestleCon, which is obviously similar to the big event. It's all. I love it. I love going to the conventions.
Well, WrestleCon, they're doing another one in New Jersey. Tommy Fierro has been doing a lot of these, and he actually hired me for his wrestling promotion, Retro Championship Wrestling, to become a manager now. So I'm going to manage some of the talent down there. He wants me to get some of the younger guys over and stuff. So I want to try to get back to, some of the younger wrestling guys, like the older guys gave back to me when I was starting out. So and it's close enough, New Jersey, New York, I don't mind traveling Connecticut, close, or if people pay me, I'll go anywhere, as long as they pay for my transportation and hotel accommodations. I don't mind doing stuff like that now. But, since Dark Side of the Ring came, I've probably done about 6 podcasts, a couple of, radio interviews. I did a couple of TV interviews. And next week, I'm going to be on the Monty and the Pharaoh show up here in Long Island. It's a weekly wrestling talk show that's pretty big out here in Long Island. So a lot of good things are happening. I think they want me to go back to WrestleCon again this year in Jersey after the virus is over. They already canceled one of them that was supposed to be in April. So they're just waiting for the all clear from the government here in the states and the townships to open up some of the towns and let the people come back out after this virus is over.
Rick, just to fast forward a little bit. Now, I'm a big fan of the Hart family, and when I was doing my research on you, I saw that you spent some time at Stampede Wrestling for Stu Hart.
I did.
How was Stampede Wrestling? Because Bret Hart is still my favourite of all time from when I was a kid to now, and love the Hart. So your time in Stampede Wrestling, how did it go? How was it?
Well, Stampede, I wasn't there that long. I was only there about 6 weeks. right after I left WWF, Owen Hart's the one that really got me booked up there, and the Bulldogs, because I wrestled with them and WWF. So when I got released from the WWF, and I think it was 91 or 92, I think I went up. I don't know when I went up there, but I went up there, in the early 90s, and Moondog was up there, Randy Colley, Bob Brown was doing the book, and Bulldog Bob Brown was up there. Larry Cameron was there. Chris Benoit was there. I wrestled Benoit a few times up there when I was in Calgary, and I wrestled him. I think it was a North American Heavyweight Championship that he had up there for Stampede. So I wrestled him in his hometown in Edmonton, and we've had a great match, me and Chris. And I wrestled him up there. I wrestled Muck and Singh, who was Norman the Lunatic, and then they brought him in to Vince. I forgot what he was called there.
Bastion Booger.
Bastion Booger, yeah. So wrestled him up there. Goldie Rogers was there. The Power Twins, Larry and Dave Sontag were up there. That's where I first met them. And then when I moved up to New York, I got to become even better friends with them. The Hearts, I guess it was, which Hart was it? They were called Bad Company up there. Brian Pillman and one of the Hart brothers, Bruce Hart. They were Bad Company. They were just getting back together, and Bruce was still doing some of the, booking up there. And, it was a whole family operation from the ring crew, and one of the brothers was a referee. I forgot which one. So they had a lot of stuff going on up there, the Hearts. And it was kind of bad timing, because when I got up there, it was like February, and it was just like 20, 30 degrees below zero up in Canada at the time. And I was like freezing. Here's a Florida boy coming up to, I'm all tanned up, ready to go to Calgary. And as soon as I got off the plane, my tan just went away. Whoop, it was so cold, and there was no tanning beds up there. There was nowhere to, even do the beach gimmick. I was like whiter than snow up there after the first 2 days I was there. Couldn't do nothing. And I came very illy prepared for the weather up there. I mean, I brought a winter jacket, but it was like, maybe 40, 50 degree, 30 degree weather, jacket. It was almost like a windbreaker compared to what they're wearing up there, like parkas and, all this Gore-Tex material that'll keep you really, really warm. And I didn't have any long johns or, anything to wear underneath. So that's the first thing I did was I went to a department store and I bought some cold weather gear because it was freezing up there. Winter hat I had to buy, gloves, a scarf. It was just brutally cold, and you just wanted to stay inside. You didn't even want to leave to go to the gym. They put me up at this hotel, and I forgot the name of it, but it's an infamous hotel where all the boys would stay up there in Canada, and they'd give you a rate and everything, like maybe $500 a week to stay at this hotel. And the hotel was probably about 4 blocks away from the gym, and one of the brother-in-laws of the Hearts married one of the sisters. He owned the gym up there. And we would walk to the gym, and sometimes you were in 2-3 feet of snow walking up to the gym. It was crazy. And on the basement of this hotel we were staying at, they had a strip club, where they had the exotic dancers and stuff. So all the boys would stay there after the matches. They'd go back to the hotel, go down to the strip club, drink, hang out, and then spend all their money they made at the night, drinking and with the girls and stuff. So it was an experience. The first week it was a learning experience. It was fun. Second week, the van broke down. I had to take a Greyhound bus back from Edmonton all the way back to Calgary. The vans kept breaking down. It was just not a fun territory to work in the middle of the winter. I mean, especially February, and it was the most coldest part of the winter up there. And as a Florida guy, I really didn't like the cold weather like that. But had some good matches up there. The TV was good. Ed Whalen was there. Stu was still around a lot. Got to see him a few times. You're a big bastard. You gotta come and work for me up here at Stampede, right? When you're done with Vince. Yeah. that's how he used to talk, and
Yeah.
he'd always grab your arms, and then, they'd invite you over. Oh, you got to come over to the house for dinner one night. Show you the dungeon. And I'm like, yeah, I heard stories about that. I'm not going nowhere near a dungeon, and I really don't want to come to your house, but thank you for the offer, because once they get you there, you're going to get down in a dungeon, and they're going to put a sugar hold on you, and they're going to test you, and they're going to, play games with you. And, the biggest guys, superstar Billy Graham was there, and all these other guys, breaking in and getting trained there, Don Baracco and the Moondogs. They let him put them in a move, okay, Stu, you can put me in a hold, and, these big guys, there was no way that, Stu would ever get a hold on them, if they didn't want him to get a hold. But if you're laying on your back and you let them put you in a submission hold, and he starts cranking it down on you, then that's a whole other story, but, that was his thing, to make a guy submit. So
I'd like to touch upon. Obviously, we've spoke about Herb Abrams a little bit, but obviously, just going to your time in the UWF with Herb. How was Herb? You've said a little bit about him.
Well, I met Herb at one of the conventions in New York. John Arizzi did one of the first major conventions, wrestling conventions, in 1990 up here in Elmhurst, Queens, over by LaGuardia at the Royce Hotel, I think it was. And Herb came in there, and he did a press conference, and he was just launching the UWF at the time. He was looking for talent. We've been talking on the phone. A woman, Georgianne Metropolis, gave Herb my number, and Bruno Sammartino spoke very, very highly of me and told him to hire me for the UWF. So that's how I got into the UWF. I was a local guy from New York, so he didn't have to fly me into New York. He was going to be doing TV tapings at the Pennsylvania Hotel, and in multiple locations around New York and the East Coast that he had planned out at the time. So he hired me to wrestle singles at the time. Back in 1990, I was still wrestling sometimes with Vince, and I was working all different promotions. I was in the IWA with Rob Russin. I worked Global Championship Wrestling, where they started out down in Texas. We were in their tag championship tournament down there, me and Steve Ray, where we were working with UWF. It was a great time back in the early 90s where you could go to different territories and still work a little bit. Yeah, Vince bought up a lot of territories, but they still had, little territories going. He took all their major talent. And that's what Herb was trying to do. He was trying to, as soon as somebody hot from WWF TV, Herb had Andre the Giant come in. As soon as Andre hit Herb's TV, Vince said, this isn't going to work. I'm bringing him back. I don't want Andre working for this guy. So he brought Andre back after Andre was off for a little bit. Same thing, Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine, Rick Rude came in, Sid Vicious, Terry Gordy. Steve Williams got a lot of these guys to come in and work. Danny Spivey was there. Killer Bees. Warlord came in. Barbarian. Samoans. Herb had some of the biggest and best talent. Don Morocco, Paul Orndorff, and then he brought in for like Blackjack Brawl and Beach Brawl. He brought in Jimmy Snuka, Mick Foley, Bob Orton Jr. He had some of the best talent at that point that could have competed with Vince, at the time. And he just didn't have the financial backing that he needed to get to the next level. And he was squandering some of the money on himself for, his extracurricular activities that you saw in Dark Side of the Ring, with everybody associates Herb. The only thing they associate the UWF with instead of, the talent that he had and trying to live out his lifelong dream of creating a wrestling promotion, which he did. But then he, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde effect. He liked the cocaine, he liked the hookers, and, the partying and all that stuff. And he wasn't a very good businessman, but, at promoting that stuff. And he would let the guys do whatever they wanted to do. There was no programs, there was no angles, there was no creative control pretty much of the show. Everybody just did whatever they wanted to do.
Turnbuckle TV is the home of UK Wrestling On Demand, featuring over 40 UK wrestling promotions and other wrestling-related channels. Subscribe today from just $1.99 and start your free 1-month trial now.
GTG, often imitated but never duplicated. Kind of broad at the shoulder, narrow at the hip. No other promotion give us any lip. We the best of the best, the beasts of the East. SOS, simply out of sight. GTG.
When he said, good times guaranteed.
How did the Sunny Beach surfer gimmick come to fruition, Rick?
Well, you touched on it a little bit. I was raised in Jacksonville, Florida, so there was a lot of surfing. I lived close to the beaches. I had a lot of friends that were surfers, a lot of cool people that I grew up with down there. So I tried my hand at surfing. I did lifeguarding on some summers when I was off, different, pool associations or, gated communities. They would have lifeguards. So I was a lifeguard for a little bit down there. I never really lifeguarded the beaches or nothing like that, but always grew up around the water and always loved surfing, water skiing. I did all that stuff, boogie boarding. So it was just a natural transition, a beach gimmick. I had first, the short blonde hair, and then I grew it out. And then I had the mullet, back in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s, everybody had mullets going around. So I was like Joe Dirt back then with the nice long mullet. And I decided, I was always a big fan of Don Morocco's too, and he was from Hawaii and everything, lived in Hawaii. So, and he did a little bit of surfing gimmick back when he was at Championship Wrestling from Florida. He did a promo where they shot some guy surfing a huge wave, and then they put Morocco, down. He put his face on, overdubbed it, made him look like a surfer. And I said, hey. First, I was called Sandy Beach, so I said, okay, maybe I'll do the Sandy Beach gimmick, And then when I was with Herb and Vince, I had to change my name to Sunny Beach because the DJ down in Florida had the name Sandy Beach already copyrighted and trademarked. So I didn't want to get in any trouble, and they sent me a letter to stop using the name, so which I did. But then I got it trademarked myself to Sunny Beach, and I own the patent and trademark for that. So I started doing I went searching around. I got a wetsuit, a body glove, a couple of wetsuits, and I started doing the beach gimmick at that time and reinvented myself after I left Vince, as Sandy Beach.
What was it like having Captain Lou Albano dub your tag team with Stevie Ray, Wet and Wild? How was that?
Oh, the captain was one of the most funniest persons I've ever met. I mean, always cracking jokes, always funny. But he was a big germaphobe guy. He didn't like shaking people's hands. He would always wash his hands, if he had to shake people's hands or, whenever he went to a restaurant or something, first thing he'd do, wash his hands and wipe off his utensils. And he was, he was just a funny guy, always cracking jokes. And you get him drunk, oh my God, he liked to have his drink, Captain Lou, and he had a good time with it. And another guy that left our wrestling community way too young, him, Bruno. I mean, they were just a wealth of knowledge. I would love talking to them, and I could talk to them for hours and hours, picking their brain about different things. Hey, Captain, what should I do with this? Or how do you think this match went? Or can you watch my match and, critique it? Or same thing with Bruno. He pulled me aside and gave me a lot of pointers. Sunny Beach, you got to fire up on him. You got to, don't sell too much for him. He's not that big of a guy. Make him look good. Give him a couple of spots, but then take control and do what you got to do. So he taught me a lot from just hanging out with some of the older guys. Johnny Walker, when I was down at Peach State Wrestling, he taught me a lot. Ted Oates, these guys were journeymen in our business, and if you had somebody that liked you and pulled you to the side, when I was with Vince, Tonga Fafita, Haku. He pulled me to the side, said this, Dino Bravo. I rode with all these guys, Hercules Hernandez, Lanny Poffo. That these guys have been in the business. They forgot more wrestling than I probably ever know. And they would pull me to the side, hey, kid, do it this way. Or maybe don't sell as much for this guy. Or maybe, pick your moment to shine, and come back, fire up on a guy. Or, if you don't want to do a job, you don't have to do it. You shouldn't put that guy, over, or I don't want you to do that. Or, you got to do what's best for your career sometimes. And, they would, give me, pep talks and, just lend their years of, wisdom to me, which I really appreciate.
That was very nice of them to do that, because obviously heard how cutthroat the business is. That's a nice story that they were looking out for you.
Like Barry Horowitz, a quick story about him. I wrestled him down when he was Jack Hart down in Championship Wrestling from Florida, and we got to be friends down there. And a lot of guys are jockeying for position, but Barry, he never had the big head. He was a journeyman. He always went out there and did whatever he was told. Like pretty much myself, I did the same thing too. Whatever they asked me to do, I'd usually do it, unless I would get hurt or they were looking to do some type of craziness that I didn't feel comfortable with. But as a person, as an independent contractor, because like Vince says, everybody's independent contractors. Nobody has contracts except a few handful of boys up there. But, Barry, when I first started with WWF up here, my first match was in Perth Amboy, New Jersey with the WWF. We did like a 11-day run where we started out. I flew in from Jacksonville, Florida, to Newark Airport. I didn't know where I was. I've never been up, New York, the big city. I was always down south wrestling. And, you got to rent your car. You got to go this thing. Well, I didn't rent a car. They just told me to be at Perth Amboy. I took a taxi all the way from the airport to the matches because, they said, get there and we'll get you a ride with somebody, or we'll do this, we'll do that. And, I felt uncomfortable asking anybody to ride, but Barry had his own car and, we hooked up in that match. And I think that match I wrestled the first night, Lanny Poffo. So I'm there. I got the butterflies. We're probably in front of about 2,000 people at the Perth Amboy High School there. And I got in the back. I said, Barry, you ride with anybody? And he goes, no, I don't have anybody. I was going to ride with Steve Lombardi, but they put him on another tour to another place. And he goes, I don't have nobody. I go, do you mind if I ride with you? He goes, no, come with me. He goes, we'll ride together. We'll, split rooms or whatever. So he took me in, showed me how to live off the road, and I wasn't used to, down south, I'd have my own car. I would drive from town to town myself. Make a long story short, Barry welcomed me, took me in. We started traveling together. The first month we were on the same tours together. So we shared rooms. We got along great. It's almost like college having a roommate, when you're on the road, splitting expenses, sharing expenses, rent cars, hotel rooms, because they could get expensive. You rent a car for a week or 2 weeks and you turn it back in. And Vince didn't pay for any of that for us. We had to pay our own trans. We had to pay our own hotels, our own meals and stuff. So that, people thinking, oh, you're making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a week. Half of that's going for hotels, transportation, gasoline, you name it, food. So, and then you get taxed on all that, at the end of the year anyway. So Barry took me in a lot. Conquistadors, Estrada and Rivera took me in. I used to travel with them a lot. Nikolai Volkov, I traveled with him and Boris. They were the Bolsheviks. Hercules Hernandez, Dino Bravo, traveled with Greg Valentine. Funny story, I was traveling with Greg. And that's how I met my wife. We were wrestling at a show in Staten Island, New York, Wagner College for the WWF. And me and Greg were riding together from town to town. And my wife's aunt was with the Athletic Commission, New York State Athletic Commission. So we all went out to dinner after the matches in Staten Island. And she was there. And I sat right across from her at dinner, and we talked. And my birthday was the next night. And before the end of the night, Sonny Beach was working his magic and got her number. And the next week, I was wrestling at Madison Square Garden with Vince, and told her to come see me at the Garden. Maybe we'll go out to dinner afterwards or whatever before. And she came, and I don't know what happened. I lost her number or something, but she came, and I didn't call her, so she was really upset. And I got to see her after the matches. All the boys used to go to this Ramada Inn hotel after the matches, and hang out and have a few drinks and stuff and get something to eat over there. And I actually went over there, and she was over there with a couple of her friends. And finally I said, sorry, I lost your number. And she was a little upset at me, but after a few drinks, I had the magic working again and got her number and never lost the number again. So, it was funny because I was traveling after the matches next week at Madison Square Garden. I was riding with Haku and Dino Bravo and Cowboy Ron Bass. And we all went out afterwards for dinner and everything. And we had a good time. So never lost her number after that. She flew back and forth from Florida. I flew up to New York to see her, on my off days, or if I was in town, I'd spend the weekend with her, and one thing led to another, and a year later we were married.
It's a nice story, that. Very nice.
Very nice story. And, we have a son together. I have 4 grandchildren now, and we've been married. Tomorrow will be our 31st anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
No problem, man. No problem. How did it feel when a guy as well regarded in pro wrestling as Dr. Death Steve Williams said you were one of the most talented guys on the card? I was doing my research yesterday, Rick.
Wow, that was an ultimate compliment. When Steve Williams, an All-American out of Oklahoma, amateur wrestler. And I used to wrestle amateur a lot down in Florida, and I won. I got second place in the Orlando Open and qualified for the Nationals back in 1985 before I, went into pro wrestling, or when I was just starting in pro wrestling. So I didn't want to lose my amateur status, and I got started a break. When I was growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, I'll tell you a quick story. Don Curtis was a wrestling promoter out of Jacksonville, well-regarded wrestler, journeyman wrestler. He was WWF Tag Team Champion with Mark Lewin, and he wrestled all over the world. Don Curtis, well respected in our business. And I went to high school with his daughter, Lisa Curtis. And I always told Don whenever I'd see him, and he did a lot of stuff for the charities around Jacksonville, and he helped coach Bishop Kenny High School, a Catholic high school down in Jacksonville. He would help referee a lot of the matches, and he always gave back to the community. So Don was like the promoter that was working for Eddie Graham, and he had the Jacksonville territory where he would promote the Jacksonville Coliseum in North Florida and Northeast Florida. And I told him I always wanted to be a pro wrestler, and he goes, "Oh, get an education, go to college. If you don't, like it, then I'll try to help you, get into the wrestling business." So he gave me some contacts down at Championship Wrestling from Florida. Danny Miller was down there, Chet Tharp, Hiro Matsuda, all those guys were, down there, and he put me in touch with them, and that's how I first started doing TV down there. So that was a really cool thing. But amateur wrestling, I loved it. It was, one-on-one. What you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And Steve Williams, we used to wrestle a little bit, just messing around before the matches, amateur, getting warmed up and stuff, doing some sit-out switches. He was just a great guy. When I was in Japan with him, Terry Gordy, Stan Hansen, I would hang out with them, Johnny Ace. Steve was just a mentor too, and he would wrestle, pretty much in Japan. It was no nonsense. You're going full speed over there. It wasn't like the States. You're laying the punches in, you're laying the kicks in, you're doing a lot more amateur moves because they appreciate that more in Japan than they do over here. In Japan, I was a bigger star than anywhere in the States because they would put me over there. They liked me. They liked Johnny Ace. We were a good tag team. They let me work singles over there. I won a lot of my matches in Japan, which was good. The last match I wrestled in Japan, I put over Dynamite Kid with his retirement match over there. So that was always a good thing. That was Dynamite's, I guess, last match or, TV match that they did over in Japan. So that was always a good historical match in the record books, I guess, or in my career, putting Dynamite Kid over in his retirement match. But Steve Williams, he was a great guy. For him to put me over like that, that means the world to me. He said I was one of the most talented guys on the card, and I was like, wow, it's coming from him, a world champion, and an amateur champion, that really means a lot.
Right, in 1992, Rick, you returned to WWF. How was your return, and who did you do battle with when you returned to WWF?
I wrestled a lot of different guys. I think Piper, Rugged Ronnie Garvin. I wrestled a lot with, who did I wrestle a lot with? Well, I think SD Jones, or that might have been my first one where I was wrestling with SD. I wrestled anybody who they put me in with. Still, enhancement talent. They didn't really, I won a couple of matches here and there, but I didn't really get a big push. It was more, of the older guys. The Ultimate Warrior, I think, was champion. Macho Man was champion at the time. I think Hogan was still doing some more movies, Suburban Commando or some other stuff. I'm not sure what he was doing, but I don't think he was champion at the time, if my mind sets me right, or he just was coming back to take over the championship belt. But got to go all over the world with him. I got to come to England. Got to wrestle in the London Arena. Got to wrestle some English boys over there, Rollerball Roca, Tony St. Clair, Fit Finley was there. Great time in England. I didn't get to, do a lot of sightseeing when I was there, which I would have liked to do, and I still got to come back and do a little more sightseeing and go to some of the pubs. We went to a couple of pubs and had some good food, and we went to the Manchester Arena, worked over there. Me and Nikolai Volkov, I think, tag teamed both times. We were in the tag matches, or three. I don't know if it was a 3-man, or I know me and Nikolai tagged together over there, because I don't think Boris was on that tour, but had some great matches and enjoyed the country. I'd love to come back. And, I got to wrestle in about 30 different countries throughout my wrestling career. And, some guys don't even get to leave the state, so I feel very honored and privileged that I had a 15-year wrestling career where I got to see the world and meet a lot of great people.
You made your way to Europe, most notably Germany, and worked a program with Diamond Dallas Page, as we know, DDP. How was that experience with Diamond Dallas Page? Love me some Diamond Dallas Page.
Well, Diamond Dallas Page was just getting into the wrestling end of the business. He was managing for a lot of years and commentating and doing all that with AWA and IWA. And we went over there with Rob Russin. And we had a great time, and got to wrestle in Germany, Poland, Austria, and DDP was a great opponent. I wrestled with DDP a little bit when John Arizzi put on a tour of the Southeast Asia. He went to the Philippines. Jake Roberts was on that card, DDP, myself, the Power Twins, Cheetah Kid. I guess it was Public Enemy back then. They were together. Had great matches with him, Cactus Jack. DDP was great to work with, and always wanting to learn more stuff. I mean, we had very, very good matches, me and him. And I consider Dallas a good friend too. He just sent me a couple of years ago his DDP yoga program, a couple DVDs and stuff, and he's helped a lot of boys get back into shape. I helped Jake and Scott Hall kick their addictions and get them a little bit healthier than what they were, 10 years ago. He's helping out all kinds of guys. A lot of boys go to him, and he's got a good thing going right now with the DDP yoga.
I need to get into that. I've said for years. I even said to him when I met him in it would have been in San Jose WrestleCon. We were in WrestleMania. I said to him 5 years ago I was going to get it, and I still haven't got it.
Well, next time you see him, just tell him, hey, I want to, do this, or even just, contact him on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you can contact him, his email or his website. I know he'll get back to you.
He's great. I loved his feud with Macho Man back in '97. That was cool.
Yeah, he's definitely come full circle in the wrestling business from driving. I think he was driving Honky Tonk Man out at one of the WrestleManias and doing a lot of that stuff to becoming world champion. And he worked really hard. I mean, Dallas is so dedicated. Same with his yoga and his business ethic and his work ethic. I've seen nothing. No guy in the business has worked harder than Dallas to get where he's at. And I'll put him over because I've seen how hard he wanted it, how he was training. He was always, looking to do bigger and better things. Back then he was taking the Metrex drinks. The health and nutrition was a big part of it for him, as well as putting the time into the ring, putting the time in the gym. He really impressed me with his work ethic, and he still does.
You've spoken about obviously your security firm after wrestling. So, that was going to be my next one. What did you do post-wrestling retirement?
Post-wrestling, I bounced around to a couple of jobs before I found out what I really wanted to do. Back before I was wrestling, I was bouncing at the nightclubs in Jacksonville, Florida. I was bouncing at a place called Playground South. It was a rock and roll nightclub where all the big rock bands would come to Jacksonville. When they weren't working at a big venue like the Coliseum, they would play this 2,000-seat Playground South that I had worked at. I was in charge of security down there for a couple of years, and got to see all the big name bands come through there on their way up and even on their way down. So I started out down there bouncing, and then when I got out of wrestling, I still bounced a little bit, did bodyguard work up here in New York. I tried to do a little bit of acting and commercials and stuff up here. I had a couple of little things I did. Then I started doing collections for a auto parts supply company called D&K. Left there, and I started selling telecommunications, a place called Telligent. And I was still bouncing on the weekends at different clubs, running security at big clubs in the city. And when I was working at this company, Telligent, I was doing great. I was a senior account manager selling telecommunications, DSL, different types of local long distance technologies, point-to-point communications, stuff like that, wireless communications. So I was making 6 figures a year doing that, but I was getting bored with that, and I worked for them for about 3 years. I was doing great. When I was about 1999, I was still wrestling, working at Intelligent. I decided I wanted to start my own security guard company. So I did that. And in New York, you got to be licensed with the state of New York. And I licensed my company as Forte Security back in 1999. After about 3 years of doing the telecom and the security, I was making about the same money with the security company and with the Intelligent. And right after 9/11, our Intelligent company went bankrupt and they went out of business. So after 9/11, I had to, I just went full force with the security and just built it up. I was doing all the big nightclubs in New York City, Copacabana nightclub, which is world famous. I had a big account there. I did a place called Marquee Nightclub, which was really big with a strategic group and a Tao group. Any major nightclub in the city, I was involved with. Supplying security guards. I was doing a lot of special events, concert security. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. We moved out to Long Island and we just started taking over Long Island right now, the last 4 years in a row. 2016, I rebranded my company and renamed it American Protection Bureau. After Forte, after all these years, you get a lot of lawsuits and loss runs. So my insurance broker said, hey, you should really start over and rebrand your company to something you like. And I came up with American Protection Bureau. So we're licensed right now in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida as a licensed, insured, and bonded security guard company. Right now I had over 800 employees before this virus on my state roster here in New York. And we were doing probably between 100 to 130 different accounts on Long Island and New Jersey and New York City. So with this virus now, it really hit my business hard. We lost 90% of our business. So right now I'm just trying to tread water and pay bills and get through this coronavirus, COVID-19. And I have some accounts coming in, but it's not like 3 months ago.
I can only imagine. It just goes to show you, just to say, there is life after wrestling, though, as well, isn't there? A lot of you guys that go in to do something else off the back of wrestling. I
knew that, wrestling wasn't going to pay the bills forever. And, after the last, probably from 95, 96, after Herb passed away and, the independent stuff was kind of drying up. And, I knew I had to feed my family and I knew I had to do something quick, to pay the bills. So I started doing the bodyguard work where I was making decent money. I worked with some big name people in the entertainment business. I was doing movie sets where I would take celebrities on and off set. I'd take them back to their hotels. And I was making really decent money at that, and it was just me, and I didn't have any overhead. When I put into it, I got out of it, And then once I started my company, I had to get liability insurance, workman's comp insurance, disability insurance. I had to get an office. I was working out of the basement of my house for probably the first 10 years I had my company. Then I got too big where I had to, start hiring people to work in my office, an office manager. I had to hire sales force, supervisors, a dispatcher, 24-hour radio dispatch. I bought a couple company vehicles and, wrapped them up with the name of the company on it. So, a lot of overhead in owning your own business. And, in the nightclub business, people get in fights at these bars and nightclubs, and they want to sue the bouncers. They want to sue the security company. They want to sue the venue. So all that stuff, took its toll on me in the early, 2000s. And then that's why I had to rebrand my name to American Protection. But I'm very proud of American Protection. The last 4 years in a row, from 2017, 18, 19 to 2020, we won an award out here in Long Island, the best security guard company on Long Island, 4 years in a row now. So we must be doing something right if our people vote for us, and our communities vote the best security companies and best restaurants, best businesses on Long Island. There's a company called Bethpage State Bank, and they do this Bethpage Bank Best of Long Island, it's called, and everybody gets into it and they vote for it. They write in or go online and vote, and there's over they said 1.5 million people voted last year. So we won 4 years in a row. So I'm very proud and very happy of American Protection Bureau and where we're at, and going forward in the future.
That's cool, man, getting those awards as well. That's high praise, that is.
From starting with one account at a bar that I was doing by myself until building it up to over 130, 140 accounts, it's a good thing, and an accomplishment. What you put into anything in life is what you're going to get out of it. And I got the best thing about my company is the people that work for me. Without the good people working for you, you wouldn't have a good business.
I'm going to close out now, Rick. Do you watch any of the modern pro wrestling? Do you get a chance to watch anything?
Once in a while, I watch, AEW, because some of our friends are on there, and WWF I still watch once in a while. Most of the guys I wrestle with, are retired or getting ready to retire. I think Undertaker's probably the last of the Mohicans, that was in the business that long, that's still with Vince. Triple H, he was just getting there when I was leaving. Shawn Michaels, he still does some cameo appearances once in a while. So most of the guys from Vince, are all in new blood, that are new in the business. Kurt Angle, he wasn't wrestling at the time when I was at Vince or and some of these other promotions. Very proud of Kurt Angle transitioning from, amateur, Olympic gold medalist into the pro wrestling world. He's had a great career. He's overcome a lot of injuries and stuff, so I take my hat off to him. I thought he did a great job representing the wrestling business, being world champion and Olympic gold medalist. Just a lot of, I'm looking forward to see where the wrestling business goes after, this, with them doing, in studio matches without an audience and stuff now with this coronavirus. That was very entertaining. It kept the people entertained while, they're at home, stuck at home, so to speak. But I think once people are allowed to get back out in some of these arenas and venues and stuff, I hope they support the wrestling business, and support their local businesses, their restaurants, their bars, the people that have been hit hardest with this epidemic. And hopefully, the world could get straightened out and we could all live in harmony and peace as one,
So I watched Money in the Bank, which was on last night, and obviously the Money in the Bank match was pre-recorded a few
Right.
weeks ago. So yeah, it's just been shot totally different. There was no commentary until somebody won. It's quite. They're just adapting, aren't they? Because I haven't got the audience to trying different things.
Well, they're being innovative right now, and they're just trying to see what works. They're just throwing stuff out there and trying to entertain the people at home. And I get it, I mean, it's hard to work, in a ring. Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk did it years ago. Down in Florida, they did it a couple of times. So, it's been done before. And I think, trying to entertain the people at this time of need, when we need something, we need like a hero. We need somebody to step up. Right now, the doctors and nurses and all these hospitals are the heroes, and they're saving lives every day. They're sacrificing, they're working long hours. They're putting their own lives at risk to be around these people that are infected with this virus. So I take my hats off to all the medical professionals out there. They're doing a great job, and hopefully, sooner than later, they find a cure for this disease, and we could all move on as a world, as a whole.
Rick, could you please plug your social media for the listeners and the viewers?
Well, I really don't have too much social media. I'm Rick Allen on Facebook, and I'm on my website for my security company is apbguards.com. That's apbguards.com, American Protection Bureau. Usually if people reach out, they can reach me at either one of those places. My email is uwfsports@aol.com. That's like Universal Wrestling Federation Sports at AOL.com. Those are about the only places that people can reach me right now. And I usually get back to people. It might take a little while depending on the volume of people trying to contact me. But after Dark Side of the Ring came out, been doing, like I said, a lot of webcasts, a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews like this one. And I appreciate it. I enjoy it. And, I'm not really doing a lot. I'm at home a lot more now because of the security business being slow. So I have time to, interact with the fans and some of the people. I can't accept everybody's fan request and everything or Facebook requests, but I try to get back to somebody if they have a question or stuff like that, or if they want me to mail them out a picture or something. I try to do that. Out of children, handicapped children, try to give back to the community or special events and stuff. I try to get involved with. So if somebody has something, or if they want me to do a personal appearance, they can contact me through that. I've been doing a lot of work with Thinking, Nick Christie, doing some signings with him. Tommy Fierro with Retro Championship Wrestling. I've been working with him a little bit. So you can contact those two people too. And they'll put you in contact with me.
Cool. Rick Allen, a.k.a. Sunny Beach, thank you for coming on for episode 31 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
Dewey, it was a great pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing. The wrestling fans, I'm sure they appreciate all you're doing, and you're doing a great job. Barry Horowitz spoke highly of you, so I'll give you a pat on the back like Barry did. You did a great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's Oh, Rick, thank you. Honestly, thank you for sparing.
If you ever get to New York, we definitely got to get together. I'd love to meet you in person.
I've been. I tell you what, Rick, I've been over. I went over as a kid with college. I was only about 16, 17 at the time, and then we came over for WrestleMania 29 when it was at the MetLife.
Right.
So yeah, I've had a couple of visits to New York and New Jersey.
Well, when you come, we'll take you out. We'll get you a couple of cold beers, and we'll show you how we party in New York.
A big thank you to Stephen Ash and Ed Dowling for producing the track. It's Stu's Wrestling Podcast, the theme. So thank you very much for that, lads. Much appreciated. Love it. It fits really well, so cheers. Thanks to you. Big thank you to Mike Angus for the show intro. As always, superb. Chris Dutton, thank you very much for editing once again. Appreciate it, buddy. And also to Lee, who does my website. Lee puts the stuff up on the website. Without you guys, I'd be screwed. So once again, as always, appreciate everything you do for me and the time you spend doing the things you do for me. It means a lot, guys.